Like and subscribe right now, or this will be in your bed tonight. Hello everyone and welcome back to another video. Today we are looking at more posts from r/ProRevenge. Before the video starts, please make sure to like and subscribe, as 99% of you who watch are not subscribed, which makes me sad. Threatened to beat up my roommate. Enjoy failing your class. During my second year in college, I lived with 3 friends in a house that had another 4 other guys living on the other side of the house. The 2 sides of the house had a lot of mutual friends, as my roommates had known them from high school. So we had tons of parties together during the year and got along pretty good until a few months before final exams. Each side of the house had its own electric, water, and cable bills, which we paid separately. I always handled our bills and paid them each month, but our water bill was actually in my roommate's name. I'll call him BIRD*. So one day the biggest turd on the other side of the house, Ledush, who handled their bills, walked into our house when I wasn't there and confronted Little Bird and yelled at him, saying we owed him over $500. Apparently, their water bill each month was about $125 and ours was $40 to $50. Ledush thought there had to be a mistake in the billing, so we should split the bills down the middle. After I was told about this confrontation, I contacted the water company and asked about the billing. I was told over the phone the bills were specifically split up to each side of the house, but a person would come out to check the water meters. The next day a technician stopped by and looked at the meters to make sure they were operating correctly and that they were billing to the separate sides of the house. He confirmed there wasn't an issue with the meters or billing and basically said they are probably using more water. End of story. I told my roommates about this, but because of my schedule I didn't see Ledush for about a week. During that time he confronted Little Bird a couple more times, who told him about the water company's position, but again he was yelled at inside our own house and was again told that we needed to split the bills with them. Then the weekend comes. My roommates and I head to a house party hosted by some mutual friends. At some point during the party I was in the front yard when a friend runs up to me and says Ledush is trying to fight Little Bird. We run to the backyard, and through about 50 people I can see Ledush with his roommates behind him, in the middle of the circle, pushing Bird, yelling that he owes him money, and him throwing him onto a beer pong table where he held him down, saying he was going to beat Bad's ass. I nearly lose my mind as I see this, and immediately grab Ledush, say a few choice things, and shove him away. I wanted to do more, but it wasn't worth it yet. So Ledush and I actually had a class together. We weren't friends, never sat together, and since the whole water bill incident we never even looked at each other in the 500-person lecture. He always sat with one of his roommates, and I sat with one of my best friends, ROSE*. As the water bill fight somewhat subsided and the final exam got near, Ledush and his roommate started to act more civil and would even make small talk to Rose and I in the hall about the final worth 75% of the grade, topics to study, blah blah blah. They knew Rose and I had A's in the class. It wasn't a very difficult class, but I enjoyed it and actually studied quite a bit and knew I'd probably get an A, and maybe I had let Rose cheat off me on the first test. I told Rose I had a feeling Ledush and his roommate were up to something, since they were being so nice, and that I expected them to try and cheat off us. So I came up with a plan if they tried. Now the format of the test is important. It was a packet of questions with the answers A, B, C, D listed vertically, and then you transfer your answers to a bubble scantron, which is another sheet of paper that gets put through a machine. Not sure how familiar people are with it. With this format I told Rose that I would circle an answer, she would look over and circle the same answer with a big circle, ensuring that anyone looking could see. We would do this for the entire 100 question final before marking our answers on the scranton. The key to the revenge plan was that the actual answer was always going to be the answer directly below the circled answer. So if we circle A, the answer we put on the scantron is B. If the circle answer is D, the answer we put is A. For a few days I kind of thought I was being weird and crazy to come up with this plan, because there was no way this guy actually thought he would cheat, and I was blinded by anger. Either way, when the day of the final exam came we got to the room early, and I sat on the far right seat of a row with Rose to my left. Guess who strolls in and decides to sit next to us for the first time all year after he threatened to beat up my best friend a month before? Oh yeah, le douche. Dude had no shame and snuggled right in the seat next to Rose with his roommate next to him. Rose and I could barely believe it and had to use some serious composure before the test started. The two of us operated like a well-oiled machine. We circled our back quote answers large, and at the end we went back through and marked the correct answers onto the Scantron. During the test we could both see Ledouche and his roommate leaning and copying our circled answers. Unreal. Fast forward to the summer break and Ledouche's roommate came over to our side of the house. When he saw Rose was with me. He opened a beer and chatted for a bit before he finally got to what we were waiting for. So how did you guys do on that test? I remember looking at Rose and saying something like, I don't remember exactly, but I know I ended up with an back quota in the class, and she chimes in saying, yeah, that sounds about right because I got a 92 on the test. The look on his face told us everything we needed to know, and he mumbled out, really? Ledouche and I both failed and have to take the class again. Bad roommate / enough is enough. A few years ago, when I was in my early 20s, I moved in with a friend. We'll call him Bob. Bob was a bit of a heavy drinker and partier, but mainly did so outside the house, so it was really no inconvenience. It was me and my long since ex-girlfriend also living there. I had lost my job and been out of work for a while, not for lack of trying, in a very small town with not much to do for work. Bob worked 2 jobs. He loved money and alcohol so much, he didn't mind if he hardly had a life to get to enjoy it, and my girlfriend worked in a nursing home during the day. I felt pretty worthless since I was no longer the breadwinner anymore, but did what I could to help out. I got food stamps to take on the food situation for the household, cleaned, cooked and did whatever I could to keep anyone needing to do a thing once they were done working for the day. It was literally the least I could do given the circumstances. About a month or 2 into our living arrangements, Bob suggested his old high school buddy, we'll call him Dick, move in. Bob explained that he worked on the boats and he would be gone for a month at a time and back for 2 weeks. Dry, rinse and repeat. My girlfriend and I thought, shouldn't be a problem, right? Wrong. From moment 1, day 1, Dick was a major passive-aggressive asshole. Bob walked him over to introduce us, and he shook my hand in a manner that he was obviously trying to crush my hand and intimidate me. I could tell from how he looked and acted like an entitled asshole, but what he did and said immediately after confirmed it. So, you don't work and live here rent-free. Must be why Bob asked me to move in. Sure is nice for you, huh? Before I could say anything, Bob spoke up and clarified that, while I didn't work, I kept the house clean, cooked and kept the fridge stocked. I was not mooching and doing my part. Dick proceeded to say, but his girlfriend works while he stays at home all day. That's totally not cool. It should be you taking care of her, not the other way around. While I totally agreed that I'd rather be there for her than the other way around, I didn't need this jackass commenting and making assumptions that this is what I wanted or needed to hear. Look, I don't enjoy being the one who stays at home while everyone else works. I'd rather be out there working, contributing, and doing something worthwhile. This is not something I chose. If someone called me and offered me a job right now, I'd take it in a heartbeat. I'd prefer it if you stopped inferring that I'm just a lazy bum, I said as politely as I could, despite how angry I was. Dick looked at me like I grew a second head or something and told me to calm down, like he hadn't said anything that was the least bit insulting, even though he clearly had. He didn't apologize, of course, and he eventually met my girlfriend when she came home. Dick was very polite and proceeded to make passive passes at her. We need to find you a working man or you could use someone like me to treat you right. My girlfriend was less than enthused by this and told him it was none of his business, and she was more than happy with me. So, from the get-go, neither of us liked Dick at all. We resolved to keep as much space between him and us as possible. Unfortunately, Dick had about as much social awareness, social cues, personal boundaries and proper etiquette as a rock. He constantly came barging into our living area, oftentimes before, after or during sex, even after being told to either knock and be acknowledged to enter or not come in at all. Also, Dick turned the upstairs half of the house into a 2-week-long party central when he was home. It was loud. Between having over a dozen people all drunkenly stomping around and being loud, he was blaring music, so loud that the entire house was vibrating. His parties were also causing a huge mess in both the house and yard, as well as damage. Dick and his buddies were also cleaning out the cupboards and fridge of all the food for the rest of us, effectively leaving the rest of us with nothing, and having to buy the food out of pocket. Bob was almost never home. He was either working or at a girlfriend's place. Even when he was home, he came in so drunk that he would pass out so hard he couldn't hear any of it. He also woke up hungover and rushing into work, so he hardly noticed all that was going on. My girlfriend and I sat down with Bob and explained the situation to him. We explained that we had tried talking to Dick and telling him that he needed to quit coming into our living area all the time and to either politely keep it down so my girlfriend could get some sleep for work or take it elsewhere. We told him about the food, the major mess he was making, and the damage to the house. Bob was livid. He told us that he'd have a talk with Dick and fix it. We hoped that would fix the issue. Wrong. This clearly, like everything else, didn't get through at that. And from there, it only got worse. The intrusions into our living area were more frequent, ruining our sex life when Dick was home, and the parties got even bigger and more out of hand. A couple of times, the neighbors actually called the cops on Dick's parties, and he still wouldn't calm down. It was a living hell. We now knew that the situation would never improve, and further complaints would only make it worse than before. We couldn't move out given our financial situation, and between us and Dick, being Bob's oldest and best friend, we didn't want to risk getting kicked out for causing issues. So I began finding ways to get back at Dick silently and without a way to try link it to us. Firstly, he had to do his laundry downstairs, since that's where the washer and dryer were located in our living area. So whenever he had to put his laundry in the dryer, I'd stop it and pee in it before starting it up again. All his clothes and bedding smelled like straight up piss, and he couldn't figure out why Dick wasn't the sharpest tool in the shed. Secondly, whenever Dick was gone, I'd go upstairs and dump out 75% of the alcohol out and replaced it with water. This reduced how loud and rambunctious he'd get, with the added bonus of having to go out and get more alcohol in the middle of the night. Effectively, we cut down the disruption by 50%, but it still persisted. Thirdly, I would also, just for fun, put his toothbrush in the dirty toilet while he was out and put it back. Dick started complaining that he constantly tasted shit every time he used his toothbrush and that he couldn't understand why. This was just icing for me, but he actually had a lot of trouble hooking up with anyone because of it. Eventually, despite all this, it didn't rid us of either his presence or behavior, and it was still taking its toll on my girlfriend. This had continued for a few months before I concocted a way to get him out of the house longer. Dick always left on the last Sunday of his 2 weeks off in the morning to return to the boats. He also had a big fancy truck with huge custom tires on it. These tires typically ran about $300 to $400 a tire and were special order tires, hard to find outside of ordering them online. So, I started putting nails under a couple of his tires before he left so they'd puncture his tires when he left, but they wouldn't go flat immediately. He'd get to the boats fine, but his tires would be flat. Dick would have to stay a week or even the whole 2 weeks special ordering or tracking down new tires while he was stuck in the town he was in at a hotel. My girlfriend and I would either have just 1 week of misery or the whole thing being peace and quiet. It was glorious. This continued for about 2 or 3 months before Dick finally couldn't take all his misfortune anymore. He told Bob he was moving out when he got back and that it was because everything was going wrong since he moved in. This was especially funny because Bob told us afterwards that he was planning to ask Dick to move out because he was trashing the house, driving up the utilities, eating all the food, and refusing to pay the difference. Dick finally showed up a week late from the boats because of the tire situation, so there was no time for him to relax between finding somewhere to put his stuff, somewhere to live and move everything. This took him all of his final off week to do. Finally, on his last day, Dick came busting into our room and started being rude and saying he was leaving because everything had been going wrong and felt off since he moved in, clearly wanting sympathy or something. We just nodded and said that's tough while going about our business. Dick just kept going on and on about everything, despite the fact that we weren't paying him any attention and you could clearly see that we didn't care about anything he had to say. Finally, we both got fed up and just looked him dead in the eye and told him he had been a terrible roommate who had no respect for anyone and that he deserved everything that was happening to him, plus some. He stormed off and we never saw him again. Bob did tell us that he had been couch surfing since he moved out and that nobody would let him stay with them because of his behavior. It was glorious and it brought a smirk to my face every time I heard it. I've long since moved out and no longer with that girlfriend and my life is in a much better place. I lament to myself that maybe I was being too underhanded and vindictive, but this guy was toxic and in all honesty, he got what he deserved. I just hope no one else gets stuck rooming with this guy. Edit. I would like to clarify that in this situation, I was not the leaseholder or on the lease. Bob was both the leaseholder and on the lease, naturally. Dick was also Bob's oldest friend, from like age 9 or whatnot, and my girlfriend and I were recent friends. Maybe a couple of years, tops. Trying to voice the problems only made the situation worse. Escalating the situation would do the same, and could potentially find us without a place to stay period. Our financial situation was not such that moving out was even an option. I'm not proud of what unfolded, and if there were a better solution to the problem, I'd have taken it. Unfortunately, there was little to be done about it in a legal and face-to-face scenario. Also, Dick did massive damage to the house. The front porch guardrails had been all but ripped off and thrown in the yard. The upstairs carpet, which was originally an off-white color, was now brown/borderline black from spilled drinks, food, vomit and whatever else you can imagine. You couldn't walk on the carpet with your feet sticking to it. Dick also completely ruined Bob's furniture too. His couch was originally a light tan color, and it was similarly stained and pocked full of cigarette burns. The end tables and coffee table were chipped, cracked and so unstable that they literally fell apart if you bumped them hard enough. The upstairs was a literal cesspit. It smelled absolutely horrid and trash. Food and dirty everything was strewn everywhere. It took an entire day or two to clean up after he went off, and that was my job. So, I'm not saying it justifies everything we ended up putting him through, but the crime justified the punishment. And for all the flack I get for the toothbrush thing, my dad had this saying he had for people who like to talk or stir up shit. It goes, do you taste all that shit coming out of your mouth, or are you just comfortable with the taste now? I felt that, considering all that Dick said about me and my girlfriend, none too quietly behind our backs and directly to our faces, it was time he actually tasted it for himself. As for the outcome, Dick realized his fast, loose and loud lifestyle only afforded him conditional friends. Sure, they'd party where he had somewhere to do it, but they had the decency and common sense not to do it in their homes. Hence, Dick was lucky enough to get a couch to crash on from time to time. Unfortunately for him, his party drive took hold, and whenever he was alone in their places, Dick foolishly tried throwing a party. He was promptly thrown out the door. Dick burned down all his friend bridges and shortly thereafter started going to stay in hotels and motels in the area. He quickly got blacklisted for trashing the rooms and partying loudly throughout the night. Bob was as much Dick's best friend as Dick was Bob's, but Dick absolutely ruined their relationship beyond repair and he no longer had any true friends left. Last I heard, Dick was sleeping in his truck because he refused to get his own place because I don't see the point in getting my own place when I'm hardly ever there, like an idiot. Thank you all for watching. Please make sure you like and subscribe for more videos. The funniest comment on this video will appear in the next video. Bye.